we're going to start with the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all.
Gathered here tonight for our workshop, which is our work session, where we have presentations and council discussion. There will be no public comment as there often isn't in a council workshop unless we go into special session. Tonight we have an agenda here starting with Mr. Michael Zimmerman, the Director of Community Development. He's going to be speaking on the 2019 New York State Consolidated Funding Applications and Downtown Placemaking Presentation.
Okay, good evening. It's kind of two separate items, like I said, so I can go through them relatively quickly. So the first item, the consolidated funding applications, as you see in the letter that I submitted, this is the season for the consolidated funding application process, which is New York State's annual, once a year grant application process for a number of funding programs. Applications are due at the end of July. I've been before you before with other programs in consideration. The two I have on here tonight would be applications that would be submitted by the city of North Tonawanda for funding for a couple of programs or projects germane to what my office does and some other city activities. So to run through them kind of quickly, the first one is through the New York State Department of State Brownfield Opportunity Area Program. As I'm sure you're all aware, we completed the Brownfield Opportunity Area Program, which is kind of a planning program, just recently. It's a three-step program, took a number of years. North Tonawanda was actually one of the first programs in the state or cities in the state to complete the program and receive official designation. So this is the first year that the state has allotted funding in the CFA for what they call BOA implementation, which allows you to apply for funding to kind of advance your plan. These are not brick and mortar concrete projects. They're still kind of planning and pre-development project funding. So we took a look at our plan, which is heavily focused, of course, on our waterfront Tonawanda Island downtown area. I looked at what were the holes and gaps we still had in terms of advancing that plan. And it was our determination that there's a piece of municipally owned property, you're all familiar with it, 78 Bridge Street, right on Tonawanda Island, former fire training facility. Great development opportunity, city owns the property, but there's a lot of unknowns about it, including most importantly its environmental conditions and some other concerns about Tonawanda Island and redevelopment potential. So this program would allow us to apply for funding to take those concerns and explore those prior to moving forward with developing that property. We'd be able to complete the phase 2 environmental studies to get a complete environmental picture of what the conditions are of that site, in addition to some other real estate development type of analyses, infrastructure analyses, things like that, that would all be germane to that site. This program is a 90-10 funding program. The state will fund up to 90% of the cost of the program. So we have an estimated budget right now of anywhere between $75,000 to, at the highest end, $100,000 to complete all those studies, in which case the city's required match would be between $7,500 and $10,000. And we'd apply for the remaining 90% to be funded through this program. The second application I'd like to discuss very quickly is one we applied to last year through the same programs. We're unsuccessful, but we're kind of in a better position to apply this year, we think, so we'd like to consider applying again. And this would be an application to a couple of different funding sources in the CFA for a total of about $475,000 to substantially fund the extension of the existing bike path, which terminates along Sweeney Street and the Erie Canal at Mayor's Park, to extend that path from Mayor's Park along Sweeney Street, primarily on the shoulder of Sweeney Street in the city right away, to the Botanical Gardens. That project, again, we applied for that last year. The project has a budget of just over $1 million. Last year, we did not have any funding in place, and we were applying for funding for close to the whole amount, and we're unsuccessful. This year, in the interim, we have secured a $300,000 grant through the Assistance to Senator Works office. So there's already project funding in place that's kind of giving us some momentum on it. The state funding sources, their requirements dictate that they can't fund any more than 75% of the total project cost. So as I mentioned, it's a total project budget that's just north of $1 million. So in this case, at our current estimate, the city would be required to provide a match of $375,000 to match the additional funding for that project.
And what did you say the estimate was 475,000 to complete the path, is that correct?
We'd be applying for 475. We have 300,000 kind of in hand. That gets you to 775. The city would have to put in the additional a little over 250 to get you to the project budget.
And that would be more apt to look at the 2020 budget for that, would that be the case?
At the earliest, yeah, these programs, you wouldn't even, the funding awards aren't even made until December. Then there's quite a process until you get your grant contract and things. So probably 2020, maybe 2021 more likely.
Okay. Anybody have any questions on this, those two projects that he's presented so far? Mark? No? All right.
The other item I had on the agenda, and I'm going to ask Joy Keeler to join me at the podium to talk about it. She'll kind of give the presentation, but lay the groundwork for it. As I'm sure you'll recall, about 18 months ago or so, the city was awarded the Smart Growth Community Funding, $2.5 million award that has been geared towards a number of different downtown improvement projects. Joy's firm was retained to help us complete a number of projects that have all fallen under an umbrella we're calling the Downtown Placemaking Project. She'll go through the specifics of everything that we're funding with that project, but all total, it's a lot of different components that's going to really change the atmosphere of the downtown area in terms of pedestrian walkability, safety, and really kind of inviting atmosphere of our downtown.
Great, here we are. All right, so you have with you a stack of sort of up-to-date information that I thought would be relevant to the conversation. So as Mike mentioned, this has been the advancement of the placemaking project with the intention for walkable, livable downtown improvements. The primary project designated Webster Street, Charlie Fleischman Park, and then some gateway nodes throughout the downtown and then onto Oliver Street as the initial primary objective. And then throughout the course of the design process, committee meetings, pricing, vetting, things like that, we've gotten to where we've got sort of our final project that we think does a great job of meeting the intention of the plan and keeps us on our target budget. So the first sheet that you have in front of you is sort of the overview of what's considered in the base bid as part of the project district. So the Charlie Fleischman Park, which would include curb realignments, utility relocations, the new clock tower, sidewalks, flagpole furnishings, and plantings for $345,000. And for those of you who have been in the committee meetings, you'll notice that's a bit of a decrease. And the decrease is because we were counting signs, the big gateway signs, the monumental signs, in two different types of locations. So I've pulled it out and put it into a separate spot for just the signage, okay? Then the Webster Street improvements, which again would have the corner curb realignments. We'd have the bump outs at each of the intersections, as well as the bump out at the crosswalk crossing in front of the Riviera Theater. The utility relocations that support that. Corner pavements, plantings, crosswalks, and furnishings for $475. Then the Main Street improvements from Sweeney to Tremont Street. So this is coming over the bridge, arriving at the intersection where the Elks Lodge used to be. So that's increasing that curb extension there. So two main points about Main Street. One, it's very, very wide, so we have a lot of vehicular movement in there that often likes to speed because the width of the space is quite large. And as a pedestrian in that environment, when you're trying to cross now to what's backside in the Remington and advancing the development, which is great, but now you're trying to cross that very large intersection over to Gateway Park. So the curb extensions allow us to have a much shorter pedestrian distance from side to side. And it also allows us to have one of our gateway feature signage elements there. So in the Main Street, we have the corner curb realignments, roadway and curb alignment, where we have a transition from an existing parallel parking and angled parking in order to move around some utility lines that would be too costly to move. And then corner pavement plantings for 135. Then the gateway signs and the neighborhood directional signs. So this is all of the signage that we've been talking about. So the two major gateway signs with power, which would be on River Road. Then two minor gateway signs with power. Those are the more narrow ones. And we've got the drawings, the same versions of the ones that you've been seeing all along. The minor ones would go on Sweeney and Webster and Sweeney and Main. Then 8 directional signs. So the intention is to take down the sort of very tall wayfinding sign that has the pictograms, and then the all 3 different versions of go here, go there signs, to have one uniform sign design. So right now we're looking at 8 directional signs, no power with those, just the directional signs. And then 1 interpretive wayfinding sign, which would be the map that Block Club had done. That is the entire downtown district, sort of the where are you here, you are here map that would be located on Munster Street. So all of those with the contingencies, $268,000. Then the alleyway lighting, so the lighting between the Manhattan Street parking lot and Webster Street proper. We know that we had the intention of having that treated as a gateway. We felt it was very important that we are capturing the movement of pedestrians and cars that are parking on Manhattan Street to feel very comfortable and confident that they are walking toward the right direction. And then also likewise when you are leaving Webster Street, which has a lot of high light quality, but when you head down that alleyway that you're not heading into the dark. So we have been treating that very much as a gateway. So you'll see the drawings as we progress further as well. Those have been, the last version we had was sort of the packet light, so the light style that you would have seen over the canal in the packet boat days. So if we add all of those together, we're at 1.325, which stays within our 1.6. Those numbers all have their own construction contingencies numbers built in, but still gives us a little bit of wiggle room. The biggest question on the alternative has been whether or not we proceed with a pedestrian signal controller that's at the corner of Main and Sweeney. Our estimators put that unit, those 4 pedestrian controllers, at about $1.1 million. The grant that the engineering department has applied for, their estimate for similar work, and CNS Engineers feels that they can get pretty tight to that budget, is it would put that same amount of work here at about 800. So it's still less than our total budget, but I think that we should still pursue it as an alternate, because we can always not accept the alternate if we choose not to. The existing federal grant that is being used for all the pedestrian controllers that are at Goundry in Maine and then Tremont in Maine is part of federal limited grant. So we don't have access to those funds. But CNS engineers and Blue engineers on our team have been very cooperative in order to kind of share information to try and make the most of the dollar value. So I'm still going to recommend that we pursue this as an alternate. And from our drawing perspective, we'll be borrowing CNS's engineering details for this same intersection. So we're not, we would be then getting into a big change of contract for us, which we don't think is really valuable at this point. Since the same work would be done one intersection away, we think CNS has been amenable to borrowing their details, if you will, to make sure that whoever is bidding is bidding all of the same product, all of the same methodology, and all of the same foundations and detailing. So that would be my recommendation, is that our base bid is at the 1.3, and then our alternate bid would be for that one block of pedestrian controllers. So the next thing I wanted to bring you to is the next sheet, which is our sort of wrap-up schedule. So we're having our interim team meetings. We've been having them every 2 weeks for the last 4 or 5 weeks, with our intended wrap-up on July 30. We have sent out an invitation to engineering, traffic, and public safety for to be able to give them our drawings the week of August 5th for a review, and then have an actual sit-down, walk through all of the drawings meeting the week of the 8th. And then our intention right now is to be out to bid August 28th, which is, and then backing out a 3 to 4 week bidding period, and then hopefully award this by the end of September, so that you've got your contracts sort of in review, legal review, before October.
And we're bidding it all as one package, right?
We are
Because have the
bidding-
discussion.
Right, everything that's here on the base bid and the alternate would go as one package.
Okay.
The pedestrian controllers that are CNS's project, that will have to go as a second, that'll be as their own project bid.
Could you turn your microphone on, please?
Your point, that's really good that you were able to grab their details, so there's just a cohesive sort of.
Right. They would be bid and installed likely at parallel times. We weren't be able to move up the federal review process in order to have them ready for at the same time.
Right.
But we discussed that we didn't want to hold our bidding project up, because you certainly have an opportunity. It's going to take a lot longer to go through contract than anyone ever wants to admit. So you might actually be ready to do construction at the same time. But the implementation time we'll have another deciding factor.
Okay.
Joy, can you just briefly, for the people that came in late, or just give us an overview of, in that, I'm not saying in really fine detail, but for each one of these with the base bids, the 1, the 2, 3, 4, 5, could you just briefly, tell us how you arrived at, because I know there was some feedback at the market, there was some people kind of a little confused. Maybe just tell them how this makes it more walkable, how this makes it more pedestrian friendly
Right.
for each one of these things, besides what you wrote here, just as a
Sure.
summary. Thanks.
Actually, if you want to go to the page that has the Elvis light at the rib from the June 7th, you'll see some photography there, which is, I think, a really good opportunity, Eric, to kind of point out where the sort of tactical urbanism version of laying out this design in the real space. The feedback that we got from the community, and particularly the businesses and the visitors and concert goers on that Friday evening. So the intention, when we look at Webster Street, Main Street, and the Triangle as a whole, we have very wide cross-section of street. Right? We used to have streetcars down those thoroughfares that required a lot more space. We no longer have those. We've sort of taken up space by using an angled parking that allows the car to kind of kick out into the drive lanes. So we get more parking spaces and we get narrower drive lanes. But one of the biggest issues around Charlie Fleischman Park was the lack of awareness from the driver's perspective of how they're really supposed to behave in that intersection. And most of us have lived in the community for a very long time, have our behavior around that intersection, which may or not be actually beneficial to people. So when you're approaching those intersections, you're not really asked to come to a stop. You're not asked to necessarily spend a lot of time looking in either direction before you proceed to the intersection, just by the nature of the asphalt and curbing configuration. So what we did on June 7th was to use chalk and cones. So we were out for the day with Mark Dagler from traffic and really laid out all of the design configuration in real time. And then we used cones because, right, drivers will drive over chalk in the only time they want. So we used cones to actually keep traffic following the layout. And then we set all the Charlie Fleischman up in its real configuration. We were actually able to do some real-time adjustments with the hues in order to really maintain a safe, controlled intersection and squeeze in one more parking space. So kind of try to use the opportunity to push and pull the design to get us to something that felt very reasonable from everyone's perspective. And then we also did those same bump outs in the real dimension at the corner of Goundry and Webster. And then the real configuration adds the Riviera crossing. And in particular, the capacity to actually stand at the intersection of the new Shelley Fleischman Park, and I might ask Bob and Mayor to chime in about what you saw that night, to actually watch the traffic stop and slow down and actually have to follow the direction. It was like a night and day transformation. So we had merchants and patrons from the restaurants coming out that night just in shock that the cars were actually doing what they were supposed to be doing. And then Mark Dagler, the fire marshal, came by that night also and kind of gave his thumbs up. Dale Marshall gave his approval on it, and I think they've approached you guys, and then we actually went in with some semi-permanent cones, if you will, the delineators to sort of create the effect for traffic to now have to follow the new alignment sort of months before the new construction will begin. So we're kind of training that behavior to slow down. So it makes a huge impact in terms of how we use that intersection for the existing restaurants, but also we're looking at the new development that wants to be happening near that corner and as we slide past Island Street. So we're now really asking traffic to slow down. So the bump outs that happen, and I'm sorry if I'm taking too long, the bump outs that are happening at Webster, along Goundry, Tremont, and then again at Sweeney Street is again intended to decrease the amount of distance that the pedestrian is crossing. The other thing to note about Webster Street is that it has a very severe crown. So the center of the road very high, where the car is parking, the sidewalk is very low. So when a pedestrian is trying to cross at that intersection, they are significantly lower than the elevation of the car in the middle of the roadway. So not only are they far away and behind an adjacent parked car, but they're physically lower. So the bump out puts us now where the pedestrian is at the end of the parked car. So the vehicles actually have to see them. They're very present, and they're much higher now. They're 6 inches higher than the curb. So we get a decreased distance, their change in elevation, and their location and proximity for vehicles to see them. So all of those are really important pieces in the pedestrian walkability aspect of the project.
Joy, I would just want to say that you did a fabulous job on the Elvis night at the Riviera and leading those tours and really showing people that had comments on what was really taking place there. And the feedback I received was all very positive. And then when Mark came to us later on and said, I have to restripe, and I'd rather not have to do it twice, we said, absolutely don't do it twice. Do it the way we're going to do it now. Get the traffic kind of implanted that people understand the way it's going to be from now on. And I think everything's going very well, and it does slow the traffic down quite a bit. So thanks for that.
Sure. There's nothing like really living it, right? Really seeing it in real person. The last item I would like to bring your attention to is the last image drawing here, which is the sort of the final location for the Gateway River Road signs. So on the same day that we were out doing our tactical implementation with our chalk and our cones, we also took a crew out to walk River Road, which, let me tell you, not a great experience walking River Road, to determine where the two gateway sign locations should go. So the one at Goundry and River Road was a given. Everyone felt very comfortable with that. It'll go on the auto parts side of the intersection. We've got a lot of room and readily accessible power. Then the second sign had been some conversation within the committee whether or not it should go at the point of the triangle in front of the car dealership or if it should go at Thompson Street. And so we literally stood out there, which was, like I said, an interesting experience to stand out there. And overall, and Mike can attest to this as well, that the scale of the sign at the corner of the car dealership is just dwarfed. It's dwarfed by everything from the overhead power lines to the adjacent like highway and truck route signs, as well as sort of the, when observing drivers through that, they don't stop there very long, right? They're continuously moving. They have no reason to stop there. So their eyes are not in any direction that's pointing to that intersection. The other issue is that it does not have the same kind of power accessibility. So we were also very challenged with that. The Thompson Street side was very obvious. Like everyone now understood that, okay, we're coming to a full complete stop, and we've got the four-way intersection over to Tonawanda Island, which is again anticipated that we're continuing development in that district, and we have ready power accessibility. So the group that day decided that that was really the best approach for that location. And then the next sign you'll kind of see a recap of where the large gateway signs are going on River Road, and then the narrower signs that are going on Sweeney and Webster and Sweeney and Main. And that scale of sign really is harkening back to our joint cities meeting, where we were really talking about the canal being the hub of both of the cities as opposed to an edge of the cities. So the big monumental signs going out on the thoroughfare of traffic in and out, and then the smaller scale sign at the hub as a neighborly approach to our twin city. And then on the back of that, you'll see a recap of that directional sign. The directional signs right now, I think, are slated for Oliver and Sweeney, Goundry and Sweeney, and then 4 of them in the district of Webster. And then there's some comments, which you can get your leisure later.
George, thank you. Very, very detailed. The clock tower, I saw that included. Was there also a piece of funding that was separate that's going to be included?
Yes, but I think that that's actually been rolled in, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, so that is considered in this,
Right.
as well.
Yeah.
Okay. And the one meeting we had where Kelly was there, who's doing the lighting along the alleyway. I saw the price of it increased a little bit, but we all said that, like we thought the initial number was low. Did she ever sort of get in contact about fastening something to a
Yes.
private building?
So I think we've gotten the sort of verbal go-ahead from the Schwans, and I've approached Mike, hopefully he remembers, but we probably need a memo of understanding
Right.
as
From the attorney's office.
project goes forward.
Just in case.
So if we felt that there was any hiccup in that, we may opt to also include that as an alternate, and the ability that it wouldn't stop the rest of the project moving forward in case there were any challenges with it.
Okay.
What's our?
'Cause-
I think it makes sense to include it.
Yeah, I think they were just like, we were scratching our head a little bit about how we kept the similar design without adhering to a private building, but
Yeah, and without ripping up all of the concrete pavement and repouring foundations, we're not really in a position to
we
do
don't
that.
want to do that.
We don't really want to do that, so. I think I like the idea of keeping it as an alternate, and then we have more flexibility on how we award it. But I think having a memo of understanding as part of the project process would be really crucial to having that
Okay.
kind of agreement.
When do we need to have that by?
Well, ideally, we would have to have that before the bid date.
Right. So, who's doing that? Do we,
Be in touch with.
with Luke? Okay, great. Yeah. And it might take a minute, that's fine. Okay, great.
So the budget includes site furnishings, new trees at the intersections. There are several trees that have died as part of the previous green infrastructure project. We have capacity to replace those trees, and I'm suggesting that we do that as part of the overall project. So rather than leave the dead tree in the existing planter box, we'll take on
The really short trees?
the pear trees. Some of
The
them are
ones
like.
that are like,
Well, some of them just have like winter damage, that's why they're kind of
oh,
small.
okay.
But 2 in particular that are in the block of the Webster's Bistro, those 2, we have 2 there that are completely dead, and 2 that are, 1 or 2 that are near the liquor store closer to Sweeney Street. So we'll plan to replace those trees inside the budget. I think it would be horrible that the landscape architect doesn't fix the trees. So, I hope you don't disagree. Okay. Any other questions?
No, I don't think so.
No.
Thank you very much.
Okay, great.
I've learned a lot throughout this whole,
I'm glad,
very exciting to
We
see.
tried to have it be very interactive and dynamic and think, to try to be good stewards of 1.6 million. I mean, we could have spent 10 million easily, and all have been very, very happy at the end of the day, but that's just not in the cards. So to be the best stewards of the funds, I think we've done a good job to be the best stewards that we can. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, I'd like to hear from Bill Davignon, Superintendent of Wastewater and Water, regarding the proposal for the median household income.
There was just a little miscommunication between our office and Eric, the dog control officer, so we're gonna have to readdress the dog census at the next workshop, so I apologize for that. So, just moving on.
Okay, thanks for having us tonight. I'll just give a quick recap of why we're here. We had the WIA grant that we received for the wastewater treatment plant capital plan. It was 1.5 million, went toward the overall $6 million phase one. We also have 4.5 million we want to finance. So we looked at the Environmental Finance Center from New York. They did say we qualify for low interest loans at this time, but we could qualify for 0% interest loans from them if we have a median household income survey done. And the reason we have to have that done is our family of four current rate is about $1,200, I think, or $1,500 above the median household income level that would qualify us for 0% loan. I want to say it's about 41,000 something, 41,000 and change for a family of four, and North Carolina is just above that. So what they want to do is they recommend, we spoke with Wendell, and I'm not going to steal Ryan's thunder here, but Wendell Engineering said there is a mechanism by doing a median household income survey, you can verify people's family of four income or their income, and then basically we can actually drive that number down to where we believe it might be a truer number, reach that level where we can get a 0% interest loan. Just on the wastewater project alone over 20 years for the $6 million loan, believe it or not, can save us at least $1 million. Upwards of $2 million on the higher interest. There's two interest rates they gave us for the Environmental Finance Center. There's a low interest rate and a high interest rate. And again, I'll let Ryan go over the exact numbers because they escape me right now. But I think between the low and the high, if we had the higher interest rate loan, it's the only one we could get, it'd be a $2 million savings. If we get the 3.25 or whatever it was, it'd be $1 million savings. Now bear in mind, we have a water plant capital improvement plan we're about to roll into too and apply for funding for that. So this EFC designation that we would get would not only apply to the wastewater project, it would apply to water, it would apply to any project that Mike Zimmerman from Lumber City also does. This is good citywide. So this would be for any financial applications we do. So it benefits the city. I do have 3 price quotes here that I believe you guys have in your packet. On the low bidder, I'll let Ryan let you know who they recommend. But the low bidder was at about $39,267. And that's with postage and everything included. That's not, their bid was $31,750, and then we had to pick up the postage, which was another $7,517. So that's kind of where we are. That's kind of how we got here. And I know the mayor and Matt were at that meeting we had with DFC over the phone. It was a phone conference upstairs. So, and again, I'll let Wendell do the details. And this is Ryan Leninga.
Thank you, Bill. As Bill mentioned, we reached out to 3 different firms, 3 independent firms that have done this work before. This is what they do. Of those firms, G&G Municipal Consulting was the low bid, as Bill mentioned. Their base bid was $31,750. On top of that, there's for the postage, there's another $7,500 that brings it to a grand total just shy of $40,000. The other 2 companies that we reached out to were relatively close as far as their base bid. How they approached the postage and their stamps and the envelopes was a little bit different. We worked with G&G Consulting on numerous occasions. We've had great experience with them. We recently just worked with them for the Village of Fredonia. Great people to work with, very efficient, very well respectful of working with the residents. And with the Village of Fredonia, they were able to secure that 0% loan. So we would recommend moving forward with that recommendation for the low bid for G&G Municipal Consulting. And as Bill mentioned, if the survey comes back as we expect it to, and the city would qualify for the 0% loan, the city could save up to $1,178,000 if the interest rate went from 1.75% down to 0%. If there was a higher interest rate to start with, 3.5% interest rate, the city could see a savings of $2,355,000. So you're investing $40,000 to save millions of dollars. And as Bill mentioned, this is not just a one and done type of deal. This applies for all the funding that the city would pursue for projects on the water treatment plant and other projects throughout the city. So this would apply for all the funding for this project and then future projects as well.
Could I ask you how confident you are that we're gonna arrive at that number from your studies?
Sure. Based on the conversations that we've had with consultants, we feel very strong that the city is going to qualify. We've had previous clients that have had similar situations where they're just a little bit above, and we've been able to secure the loan and drop that rate down to that 0%. It's not guaranteed, of course, but yeah.
Hi Ryan, how are you?
Good.
So the percentage, is that gonna vary based on the median income, or that's what you initially were saying? Right?
Right.
So if residents make a little bit more, then we're only gonna save maybe we only have to do 1% interest, or our loans are only 1%, as opposed to if we're there's a little bit more lower income, then it'd be 0%.
Correct.
What other municipalities have applied for it, or have done this?
The Village of Fredonia, I mentioned just that they just completed the survey a month ago, and they were able to get from that 3.5% down to the 0%.
Okay. Is a lot of the cost associated with postage too, it seems? Is that?
I'd say about 10%, a little bit less than 10% is for postage.
Okay. And there's no way we could combine that with like water bills or anything that we already send out?
Most likely not. This will come straight from the consultant, so it would be a mailer from them.
Okay.
So it would be coming from the city. This does have to be an independent consultant that does this. It can't come from the city.
Right.
So in order to qualify for that 0% loan, it can't come through the city or through Wendell, so it has to come through a third party.
And is there any reason why it would eventually not be 0%? Say if we did get it, is there a time limit or any kind of terms with that?
For this loan, for the wastewater treatment plant, there is no term for it.
No terms.
For any future projects that you would apply for, you would have to apply again to get the 0%.
Different. Okay.
You would have the survey already completed that you could use as part of that application.
And I'm assuming even if another agency has information on our median household income, we can't use that. We have to use this independent contractor.
Correct.
Okay. The census that will be coming out, that wouldn't help the case here at all.
Not for what we're doing right now.
Okay. But have municipalities used that in the past too, or is this completely new and it hasn't been around in 10 years ago? Or?
Again, this has to be completely independent, so it has to be a separate entity that actually performs the survey to confirm.
Say it one more time, independent, right?
Yes.
Yes. All right, thanks.
Yep.
And they will for sure collect the information that they need for us to fit the requirement for this financing, right? Like if they knock on doors and no one answers a single thing and no one answers any of the mailers, what happens?
Well, with G&G, what they proposed to do was do an initial mailer. We'll wait a couple weeks to see how many people actually respond. From our experience in the past, it's better to go out and do a door-to-door after that rather than sending out the second survey. Typically, if you don't respond to the first one, you're probably not going to respond to the second one. There is a minimum threshold of the amount of residents that have to respond. It's about 40%. If we don't get 40%, then we don't qualify. So we do need to hit that 40% minimum. Again, in the past, based on previous experience, we've been able to hit that goal without any.
What's the timeline in completing something of this task here with the door-to-door and the mailings, the 2 survey mailings, for us to find out what our exact median income is, and then the timeline for that?
Sure. I'd say you could probably expect 2 months. We would send out the initial mailer. We'd wait 2 or 3 weeks to see what kind of responses we get. After that, we would, if we have enough right there, then we're done. If we don't have enough responses, then we'd go back out and do the door-to-door. We would typically do that during evening hours between like 4 and 7 when people are actually home, and then on the weekends as well. So we will keep on doing that until we hit that 40%. So it could be as short as 2 or 3 weeks. It could be as long as 2 months, depending on how quickly we can get response back.
And, Bill, what would you need from us as far as, for a timeline on what, to deliberate on getting this started?
We would just submit the low bid to you. I show you all 3 bids, but I just bring this right to the next council meeting, put it on the agenda for approval. The only thing in question is how do we fund it, because it benefits the whole city, not just water, wastewater. I don't know if we split that up or if you just want to take it out of the water, wastewater fund, we'll figure it out later. It's almost like we can't not do this, because if we don't, we're missing out on a huge opportunity to save money. I never like to take $40,000 and spend it willy-nilly. It's not our intention here. There's a huge potential for savings. I mean huge, because you got to remember, we're not talking just phase 1. We have a $31 million plan and a $34 million total plan over the next 20 years. Now, I know this survey won't be good for that duration, but I anticipate phase 1 and phase 2, this should benefit us tremendously. And those are the largest portions of the capital plan for wastewater. And the first phase of water alone, phase 1A and 1B that we proposed to you was $29.4 million, I believe. And that's a huge chunk of money. And when you're talking 0% versus even 1.75, the difference in that is monumental over that. I'm not saying you're going to give me that money today, and I'm hoping, but if that does come to fruition, that's where it's at, and it's going to be a huge amount of savings to the taxpayer. So it's, ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure almost. So I think it's a very worthwhile endeavor, and I hope you support it. I know money's tight. I do understand that, but we don't want to give away money in the future either and spend extra money if we don't have to. So I hopefully you consider that, and I will wait for you to give me the direction on when you would like that to appear on the agenda, whether it be the next one or the one after that, or if not at all. So I will wait to hear from you, President Zanzilka. You can reach out to me and let me know what the consensus is.
Sure.
Thank you very much.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Any other questions? All right, thanks for your time.
Thank you. Next, we'll go on to some general discussion items. Did you want to bring anything first?
The only thing that I have is a letter from, excuse me, on behalf of Mental Health Peer Connection, we are writing to request to use Gravik Park for our upcoming kite flying event on September 7th, 2019. The event will begin at 11 a.m. on the 7th of September and conclude at 3 p.m. We anticipate a group of about 100 plus families to come support the Mental Health Peer Connection by flying their kites and enjoying hot dogs and hamburgers that will be grilled by our volunteers. In order to hold the function at Gravik Park, we are more than willing to pay the $300 that is needed to ensure the space. Thank you for your time and consideration, and I will look forward to hearing from the council soon. Please let me know if you need any more information or documentation from me in order to make my decision easier. Sincerely, Maura Kelly, Director of Mental Health Peer Connection. That was my only kind of
I
correspondence.
don't have any problem with putting that on the agenda.
Are they a nonprofit?
I don't know.
Because
Yeah,
that would like see that.
yeah, if they are, I'll contact her, find out. If not, then I won't, we won't charge her.
Yeah, because if she's willing to pay it and, they are a not-for-profit, then obviously we can leave it.
I think they've done that before. Yes, sir. I think they've done that. Yeah, but yeah.
All right. The only other thing that I think I have here, is, and I'll read this letter, it's from, Roger Zavolek, Chief of Police. Honorable Mayor Arthur Pappas, dear honorable body, due to the recent retirement of school crossing guard supervisor June High, school crossing guard Jill Emma Flanders of 57 Vanderbilt Street, North Tonawanda, New York 14120, has been appointed as school crossing guard supervisor for the North Tonawanda Police Department effective July 1st. So I guess we can just put this on as a receive and file for the next agenda, the regular meeting. Also, we did get a copy that Nick, speak of the the devil. Nick, we were just about to talk about the school resource officer agreement that we received, and some of us had some more time to review.
Okay.
Was there anything, before we discuss it, from the legal department that we needed to be aware of as far as, any further developments or any concerns or changes that we need to discuss before we deliberate on it?
No, as you can tell between the last two, I believe, sent out both of them to you. They're virtually the same. The only difference is the amount being paid.
Does anybody, after reviewing this, have any issues with, the details in the agreement? Austin, Bob, Mark?
No.
Donna? All right, so if that's the case and legal approves that, the way it's written, then we should put that on the next agenda for approval. Other than that, Bob Pecoraro, do you have anything for general discussion? Alderman Austin Tyler, anything for general discussion tonight?
Yeah, the resolution for the ethics committee that I submitted last week, has anyone had an opportunity to look it over?
I looked it over.
And I welcome comments. So where we stand right now is, the way I understand it, is the county attorney had written to us after a resident had requested information about ethical dispute, and the county attorney basically wrote back that they aren't responsible for our ethical concerns. So the way
Is that, well, let's take a step back here. I did not see anything in writing, unless, Nick, have you seen anything in writing?
Mr. Pecoraro, would you turn your microphone on,
Sure.
please?
I just asked, our city, assistant attorney whether or not we received a formal response back from the county saying that they cannot fulfill the ethics piece to, our complaints.
We have received paperwork back from the county attorney's office. To put simply, I disagree with the county attorney's opinion. I do believe that a council member can submit a opinion to the Board of Ethics for the county. That being said, I do believe that at the same time as the resolution that has been presented to everybody on the council, it is completely acceptable to have a ethics board at the city level as well. And we'll leave it at that aspect for the county. Thank you.
So it's more or less, the way I understand it, and based on what Nick was saying, is residents could potentially come to council members with ethical concerns, and then we have to distribute to the county. The county won't directly talk to the residents, maybe employees. So it would be us having to then do that. Instead, we could potentially make our own committee that residents or ourselves or employees could use as a reference for information or submit complaints, more or less. So like, you know, I took a stab at different aspects that are I've seen around the nation and just different articles, and I think it leaves a lot of room for discussion and some comments from everyone. But it's sort of like, what do we want to do or not do? Because the state says we have all the right as a municipality to create our own board as we see fit.
Yeah, now, I'm just looking, Austin, to see where you sent me this resolution in the email, so I'm just pulling you up on my.
So that was another question of mine. I handed it to everyone last week, and I did submit it to the clerk's office to be.
Wasn't there some sort of a?
It was a
Yeah, I
paper.
got that, but wasn't there anything that was amended to that?
Well, amended?
There wasn't there anything added to that or anything?
No one gave me any there was no changes to it. So I submitted it to the clerk's office, but it didn't show up on the agenda tonight. So as a side comment of concern is it's a resolution. The way I understand it in state law, is it Public Officers Law, Article 7, is anything that's gonna be a resolution or law or rule that's gonna be up for public discussion needs to be presented to, citizens. And be,
For the council meeting, this is the workshop. The agenda for this.
Right. So my confusion is the fact that like I had an attendance resolution that popped up on a workshop, but this item did not this
We
time.
had this exact same discussion before. That was a mistake that it was ever put on the workshop agenda.
Mr. Parrish, would you turn on
That's
your
like-
microphone, please?
And I apologize. Okay, we've had this discussion, pretty much the exact same discussion multiple times before. The one time that there was something put on the agenda for Alderman Tyler was a mistake, the workshop agenda. For the common council meetings, you are correct, they would need to be on there. This is not a common council meeting. For this workshop agenda, they are specifically for the 15-minute presentations. Everything else can be brought up during general discussion. And I think actually Lori explained that to you again this week.
I get that, I just haven't seen any reference to that degree or any other, and it just seems odd if we're gonna be talking about something in a public setting for people to be able to reference it.
Are we gonna stick with your, resolution, or are we gonna debate
Right.
what's on the agenda and what's not on the agenda, honestly?
It's just good
I
to.
think we're just having a conversation about the.
Yeah, I think you gave it out,
So-
yeah,
so what
you
is-
gave it out last meeting, handed it out, said we should review it. As far as anything being like Matt saying, we're not voting on this tonight.
No,
So we would now like to talk about what we do like and what we don't like is what I thought we were gonna do.
exactly.
So I don't see why that wouldn't be something we could do under general discussion.
Mhm.
As a matter of fact, I wanted to, make a note, you know, I don't think anybody has said, and I like to reference the, assumption, I guess is the best word, that we would not want to do an ethics committee because we were, as Nick just told us, under the impression that there is some interpretation issue, and Luke had verified that as well, with the county versus what they can adjudicate and what the city can adjudicate. So, you know, that delayed the process, but I don't think, and I think legal agrees, that we don't, you know, have any issues with the creations of an ethics board. But to sit there and say, let's throw it on the agenda and get this done without having the members weigh in on it, I think there's a lot of questions about, I went and looked up as many municipalities as I could because I saw a post on Facebook that said, all these different, municipalities have this in place. And when I kept looking to see who in this area, would be a good example to see their policy, and I don't see it here. I don't see any local municipalities that have some sort of a framework that we can go on. And I would like to look into that. I'd like to see this done properly. And I don't know if you're aware of it, but several of us have signed this petition that was on Facebook saying that, you know, its directive is to say, we need to urge our council to do this. I signed the petition. I don't have a problem with an ethics committee. There was a petition that was just placed on Mr. Brennan's page, recently that, I was more than happy to sign because it was urging us that we must comply. Well, I don't have a problem complying. I just want to know what the standard of conduct is and get the details discussed before we start saying, you know, this is long overdue. Just like you said, we need to know how the members are selected. We need to have a lot of
Well,
language.
so, and if I may, I will again reference last week's resolution presented by Mr. Pecoraro here that did not describe any of the things that you talked about. We didn't have any references from other municipalities that created a safety committee, and I don't know how it's appointed. Like Donna, you just said you'd like to know that sort of thing. So to know that here, but you didn't care to know it there is weird, and I don't know.
I don't think it is.
Are there
because,
other municipalities that create a safety committee?
Have there other municipalities that have had a security issue?
But that wasn't the question.
Well, it is the issue.
I think we're getting off topic.
No, I don't think so,
I
though,
don't-
because
I
I'm
don't
just
want-
trying to understand our
I-
process for this sort of thing, because I think this is quite detailed.
The
And-
process the process may differ depending upon the subject. And I think you're missing the point of what is urgent
Mhm.
and what is pressing versus what is what you presented 3 weeks ago, or, what needs to be discussed.
Well,
If there was a situation, which there was, that needed us to take action, I think sometimes you have to put things aside and investigate doing something right away, versus an ethics committee that really isn't a safety of the residents concern at this point.
I think
We're in
that's,
danger.
that's subjective.
There is a lot of details here. Thank you.
Please put your
Oh, I'm sorry.
microphone on, please.
Mine usually buzzes though. Let's hope it doesn't.
we should, as long as everything else is turned off.
If everyone, okay, you did put a lot of thought into it, and I think I stated last week that I think the delay was because of the misinterpretation of what the county came back to us and said. I don't think that we don't need a board or a committee, and that's another thing, are we creating a board or a committee, is there a difference? How are we gonna proceed on who's picking the people that sit on that? And I'm not sure if it should be each one of the council. I think, I think you said in here that each council member would pick a member of the community. So I think there is some things that definitely need to be discussed on it.
I think that would be the most confrontational, and let me explain exactly why. So, everyone up here was elected, or it is an elected position at some point. So the people of the city said, I trust those individuals to run the city, right? And similar to that, we're talking about nonpartisanship. So in most scenarios, the mayor appoints a lot of these individuals for different committees, and that's one person, right? So in this scenario, it at least divides that opinion more or less to take someone from the attorney's office, if that may be, to take two members' opinions that are citywide aldermen. And the same goes with all the other positions, maybe even the clerk's office as well, to some degree. So I think that distributes the power more or less, or opinion, to make it a little bit less partisan. That's my thinking behind that. So, other committees, different, planning board, zoning board, it's ethics is a kind of a different niche.
Yeah, it is.
What-
Exactly.
Yeah. What is your standard of conduct outline? What is your standard of conduct that you would like us to have this board use as its guideline?
So are you referencing what their bylaws would be if
No.
they created their own
No, I mean,
bylaws?
if you're saying there's a need for an ethics committee because there are violations or concerns with ethics, don't you think that we would have to understand as a council, before we go forward appointing people and so forth, that we understand what we want or what we believe is fair and just for a code of conduct for a city official or a department head, etc.
Well, and that's part of it. They wouldn't have any voting. What they say doesn't go. It's more of a reference to either create codes or reference state codes or just give an opinion or pass along information in a more discreet way of any concerns that might be submitted to them. So I think like I said, it's more of a discussion and something that we can talk about what we want the committee to do, but also they, in theory, would create their own bylaws and so on, which the council would ultimately approve as well, right? So I think the difference here is whether or not you may feel we need to do this now. I'd rather be proactive than reactive, and I understand the situation with the safety committee to some degree being a more reactive approach, but I think rather than having a bigger ethical issue come up, we could sort of create this now. It'll take some time, and if we ever run into an issue, this could be a tool for all of us.
Yeah, but if you don't know how about these members will be selected, that's a big, I just think that the framework is started. The discussion is not. So let's do it right, of course, but I don't think there's any urging that needs to take place for us to put an ethics committee in place, because we want one, and we're gonna do one, and we have the choice to do one. And we also have Article 18 that we have to consider, but we can also have our own local, which may be a stricter ethics code, that we can imply. So, and I wanna just be clear here, this item has nothing to do with Alderman Peperaro's forming a safety committee assessment for, it really doesn't.
I think I'm just using as a comparison of our process in which we create these boards and what that really means.
Well, we already have someone in place that's the police chief for a perfect reference, whereas we don't have a code of ethics reference person or a point person. So I think, other than the county.
Who doesn't want to?
So, if they don't want to, they do want to, they might be able to. Are they obligated? There's all these things. Whereas Alderman Peperaro's situation was, we need to act, we need to be safe, and we don't want anything to happen. So that formation takes precedence. So it was a little different scenario than what you're trying to equate here. And like I said, I don't think there's any urging that's necessary. I just think there's discussion that needs to happen because I believe that I'd like to see with this ethics and this transparency we're all, talking about and entertaining. I want to make sure that, financial disclosures and job, associations are also included with the board members or the council members or department heads to make sure that that's just as clear and transparent as far as that
Right,
goes.
and that again could kind of be a part of the bylaws. If it was something like every year we're going to collect financial disclosures from each elected official, that, that's the nitty gritty stuff. But I think the first step is creating a board, having an idea of how those individuals are appointed in a nonpartisan fashion, and, what are the restrictions on them. I think this is a decent start to that, and if anyone wants to send me pieces that they feel like should be modified or added for whatever reason, but I don't want this something that's just dragging along for the next 6
No, but
months.
like I said, the delay, like we said before, was the confusion by the county. It wasn't the
And
confusion by your
right.
Who is the
council.
ultimate arbiter of the standards of conduct?
Yeah, that's what I was
well,
wondering.
I think that's part of the question too. We don't have anyone. We don't have an HR department. We don't have an ethics board. And, we can all go sit up here and
Well,
smile
that's
and
what-
say we're going to be the best we're ever going to be, but stuff happens to people sometimes, and oh well. And this is just another piece of checks and balances that we can use as a tool for the betterment of the city.
But I, again, get back to who's the arbiter of the standards of conduct?
Well, we to some degree are.
But we've already talked about all having a difference of opinion on various things that we're moving forward with. So I don't know how we're going to arrive at standards of conduct or how an ethics committee can arrive at standards of conduct.
So there's standards in the state about these
Give me-
committees and
give
how
me-
they're formed.
Well, no, you tell me what ethical standards that this committee would look at.
They could look at our codes, reference our codes, how our parliamentary procedures go, cell phone policies potentially. I mean, they are really supposed to be a tool to sort of take the burden
But it's-
also off of the attorney's office.
I'm looking at it as ethics, just strictly ethics.
Right, so if a council member feels that they're not being treated in a very fair manner, for example, that their voice isn't being heard similar to other members of the board, then maybe that is something that they could at least give an opinion on, saying, this is article so-and-so that states this, and this is why they're incorrect or correct.
And then there are consequences
Hmm.
of that.
So
What would be the consequences of that?
it would just be,
And I
again,
guess
a
that is part
reference,
of what
right?
we have to
It,
discuss.
it's almost like when traffic safety says, we recommend a sign here, and we say, okay or not, right? Or they just talk about stuff, a resident complained about this, and we just file it through, so similar instance here, if you need a comparison.
Nick, do we need any other, communication with the county, as far as what they use as their standard of conduct to reference? Or I think there's a little bit of research that we need to do. Cause like I said, I looked online and I'll be darned if I could find anybody's, code of ethics or ethics board framework, template, examples?
Just for reference, the two closest municipalities would be Tonawanda and Amherst. And I believe Amherst appoints theirs by a different party member, so Green Party working together, but that's a label. So I don't really agree with that.
So with regards to the question, I guess if your initial question is, do you want to look at the counties, then we can grab up that information and try to mimic it off that if that's what everybody chooses to
Or,
do.
yeah, to reference.
Or if you want to do as Mr. Tyler has stated that he is, my understanding, he's looked at two different municipalities. Is this mimicking off of them or?
Is that a question?
Yeah.
They didn't really have great structure to theirs. I think it was more of a sense of like what the state defines ethics committees as, what their sort of roles are. Tom DiNapoli's office, for example, he defines a lot of what ethics committees could be. So there's a lot of references that the state gives, New York State specifically, in this matter. So, you know, we should be creative enough where we don't have to rely on another municipality's resolution. We can kind of be the standard that other municipalities follow.
I just like to see what doesn't work and what works, and not repeat a mistake of another.
I mean, if it comes down to it, it's approved. We have a committee, and we don't like what they're doing. It dissolves then, right? I mean, that's the idea, is that we will have the ultimate decision in the end, and they're just a reference board. So.
Anybody else have any comments on this?
No, I would like to look at the, I just pulled up the.
Speak up.
Sorry. I would like to look into, the other municipalities just to see what theirs is, and I just pulled up city of, Tonawanda, and I'd have to, look through it. But, okay, moving forward. Basically, do we want to move forward and say that we do want to create a board or committee? And with that, say, there's a lot more to discuss on it. And I'm just trying to see
Right.
where we can go from here.
I would say that, I think your point is valid, that maybe if Nick, I think he just agreed, could reach out to other municipalities and just ask each one, do you have an ethics committee of any sort? Can you please send us the resolution? And at least have that for everyone to sort of digest. And then we can come back to this, to the following workshop meeting and see where we land. And just, you know, again, I would hope not 6 months, a year, whatnot, because we waited a year for the county to ever respond to us, it seemed. So, you know, we can move along in that fashion. So by the next workshop, hopefully we have reference to other municipalities, ethics committees in Western New York, and then we can go off of that. And maybe even reach out to the Open Coalition for Government. They might have a reference to as well.
And I just want to ask Nick too, there's a reference to him in his office with Luke. Do you agree with this part here, Nick, where the city's attorney's recommendation shall be an employee of the city's attorney's office to fulfill the requirement of at least one member of the board being elected or appointed municipal officer or employee per Article 18, subsection 3. I don't know whereabouts that is.
There's a state reference, if I'm not mistaken, that it requires a city employee or elected official to sit on one of these committees. So the reference that I was making, I thought was most relevant for the attorney's office to always have someone stand in, at least be an ear on the conversation, and potentially a decision maker, more or less. So again, part of the discussion.
I personally don't have a problem with it. I can't speak on, obviously, my whole entire office is, I am second in command, and I don't know what my boss would prefer to have happen. But needless to say, if that is something that would move forward, I'm sure Luke wouldn't have a problem with it. That was what was requested.
Yeah, if you could just take that back to him, just because I think that's an important piece, if it's in the resolution, that we would want feedback from you and Luke.
And as Mr. Tyler stated, I have no problem reaching out to local municipalities. In our profession, I speak to a lot of other city attorneys, town attorneys, and that, and I can reach out to several of them just locally, right around us, and see if they have an ethics board and what it encompasses. That
any municipality around us, so.
Yeah, and I'm gonna also do some, due diligence in call Amherst and Tonawanda, find out what ethic issues have been deliberated, how helpful this has been, and if there's been any, issues that we need to consider when forming such a committee. And, big references to that on top of what you're gonna research.
You know, the thing, I like the idea of an ethics committee, and, but this board is gonna adopt regulations pertaining to ethics regulations, investigate ethics complaints, and determine penalties. That's a lot of heavy lifting that this committee or board or whatever you wanna call it has to do, and with the people that are appointed to it, better have the wherewithal to understand what all those regulations are, how to investigate a complaint, and then determine penalties.
Well,
I agree.
I completely agree, and I think it's a substantial committee that can make a huge impact, and I know individuals who would fit a position.
Give me an example of what would go forward as an ethics complaint.
So what if someone within the city saw someone taking money from one account, right? And they didn't feel comfortable going to anyone but this ethics committee, and they wanted to understand if they were in the right or wrong. That could be something that goes through there. Maybe it's just filed and it's something to investigate through another department, but again, it's sort of what we want to make of it. If one of the council members up here again feels that we aren't following a certain state code correctly, that could be referenced by the committee. They could do the due diligence to look into it and come up with an assumption for it. Because I mean, the attorney's office is busy, right? So again, this is just there's a lot of volunteers out there who are willing to participate in something, not just like this, like a ton of different committees. So
That have investigative skills to be able to do the job that we want them to do.
sure, a lot of times it's just reading state codes. I mean, a lot of the things that I've learned being on this committee is just reading state codes, our local charter codes, and so on like that. I mean, you don't learn until you find it.
Right, but you understand there are limitations with the state Article 18 regarding morals, principles, and judgments about political actions. That's interpretation. So
Right.
there may not be a Article 18 specification for every situation. And just like Bob said, imagine trying to put this resolution through and then trying to get 7 people who didn't know that this was all what would be required. That's a big lift, you know? So
Well, I would hope that we would
I just want to
the right individuals.
dispel the misconception that we did not want to do an ethics board because it hasn't been done already. That's what's out there. So that misconception, I can tell you right now, you can put it to bed, you can write about it on Facebook, but I'm live on Facebook now telling you that we can form this board, we can do this if it's done properly. I signed the petition and I signed it as council president. Bob Pecoraro signed Mr. Brennan's petition.
It's great.
Created by Austin Tyler. And so there is no obstruction to this. It's just, let's do it right. Let's find out what is working elsewhere. And let's make sure that your resolution is complete. And that's it.
Okay.
I don't have any other issue. And if you thought that for some reason myself or this board did not want an ethics committee, then please, don't litigate it on Facebook. Go ahead and ask us. Let's have a discussion. We feel ready that we can proceed forward with an ethics committee.
Well, words, actions, hopefully we can move forward in a timely manner.
Right, but we also, back to the county, as Nick said, if the county still is involved, if someone came, you're saying if someone had a complaint about a council person, it still can go to the county. Is that correct? Or no?
That would be my opinion, yes.
Right?
Yes.
So this is what we have to discuss. If the county handles, if someone has a complaint against one of the council persons up here, the county can handle that under your opinion, in your opinion. So we have to define that
Right,
too.
how
Do we
do they
still use the
handle it?
county? If we have our own board or committee, are we still gonna use the county in the way that they are supposedly handling it?
Donna,
That's what I'm saying.
I completely agree with your statement, but I just don't want to be misinterpreted that
Right,
we still are able to,
use them.
no, we're still able to develop a city ethics
Committee.
board.
Right.
That doesn't, we can still handle that locally
Mhm.
and not go through the county. But no matter what, in my opinion, yes, the county is available to us.
Okay.
Has anyone ever used the county ethics board up here?
You have a question?
I just asked a question. I don't vote on this. I don't have any part in voting on this, but I just have a couple questions. Is the disagreement between our attorney's office and the county, that has not been resolved, correct?
I would say no, Mayor.
It has not been resolved.
No.
If this has not been resolved, now I know the state requires that you have, excuse me, a code of ethics, which we do. The state does not require that you have a board of ethics, which we don't. They also, from what I've read, and again, I'm not an attorney, I don't know, and this is where the disagreement comes in, that the county, where a community does not have a board of ethics, the county is obligated to take this on. That's what I read. Is that correct or wrong?
Mayor, I can't respond on if they're obligated or not. But as I stated in my opinion, we are able to send stuff to them. I can't discuss if they're obligated or not.
That, I think, is an interesting question, because if you don't have one, are they obligated to take that on if we should have an ethics problem? I think that's a question that maybe should be answered. I don't know that there's any problem forming our own or not. I mean, there's a lot of questions, as everyone says, to answer. But I think step one is to find out and settle, first of all, between the county and us. Who's right, who's wrong, or whose opinion is correct under state law, and go from there. I mean, there's nothing wrong with forming our own committee. No one, I don't think, objects. But I think the question is it necessary if the county may be obligated to take it on? I don't know.
Right.
And that's just my question.
The route, basically, you're saying is if the county can take requests based on council requests through residents come to us, we send it to the county, they say, yeah, is that good enough for us ethically wise, I guess? Or do we want to create something locally? That's the question, right? I don't think there's a doubt that they receive some kind of ethics concerns to some extent, right? We all live in the county. So there's got to be a way for anyone in this county to get to them. So I think the real question moving forward is, do we want to create something locally that we feel will have more of an impact and help us more than the county ever has? Because it doesn't sound like anyone up here knows a single individual who's on there, has ever used it before, and really it sounds like they don't want anything to do with us based on what the attorney's office there said. And we can interpret so many ways for his idea of what they do and what we do and what they don't do. But I think moving forward, we look at something that we're going to do and not wait for another entity to move forward.
No, we don't have to wait for that, but we want to use the correct information moving forward. And I think Art makes a good point, is to have all our considerations and all our questions answered to move forward. But I mean, so where's the downside to saying that we all would be willing to look into an ethics board locally? I'm trying to find the downside here, because, you know, there's this petition to urge us to do this.
I don't think urge was.
I think there was definitely an urge was in there, and I don't want to pull it up, but it was definitely in there as if there's some sort of obstinance to having a ethic board or a ethics committee. I just think we just didn't have everything set to roll, like we were holding back somehow. And I don't see that because, as you can clearly see here tonight, we have many, many questions with unanswered and many concerns and standard of conduct that needs to be discussed or at least described. And when we're considering, is it going to be 7 members? Is it going to be 5? Your resolution says 7. If somebody on here thinks there should be 5 members, then maybe we should, we have to entertain those things. But I don't think we've had anything aside from last meeting that was handed out at the end that we need to act on besides looking that over.
Yeah, no, nothing. Like I said, I wanted to have a discussion here. I think we're sort of just pandering at this point. So let's move forward, collect information that we need. I don't really care about the county so much, and that seems like a dead route if it took 9 months for them to get back to us, and whatever. So I think the best route, and as Nick has offered up, which I think is great, for their office to reach out to the municipalities and get any information they have, and we move forward with it. And if you don't agree, then you don't agree with the resolution, state reasons why, and maybe it doesn't pass and we move on. So I don't think we have to waste any more citizens' time here. Okay? So thank you for the comments at least, and I'm looking forward to hearing information leading up to the workshop.
Me too. Alderman Donna Braun, did you have anything for general discussion?
No, only that I'm not sure. I'm sure that Matt will announce it, but next Tuesday is the council meeting early because of the Canal Fest.
Correct.
The Canal Fest does start on Sunday, so week of festivities. Yeah. So Matt can announce that. I'm sure that it'll be quick and
It's already on the calendar, and but we should announce it. The council meeting, and every year, it's our process to try to have the meeting before the parade. It's an abbreviated meeting without a public comment. That's the way it's been for years. So I believe the meeting will be at 5 o'clock next week, so that no one misses it. It's on the calendar if you want to reference it. We'll put it up on the website if it's not on the website, but I'm sure it is. But just to let you know and the press know that it'll be 5 o'clock Tuesday the 16th will be our council meeting, so that we're able to participate in the parade immediately after. Alder, did you have anything else?
Only to say it's nice to see Mark sitting next
Yes,
to me
Mark.
again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Welcome back again.
You're looking good. I'm glad that you're back. And how are you been feeling?
Feeling good.
Good. Any comments or things for general discussion that you may have over?
No, I think we've taken up enough time.
Well, hey, it's got to be worth, if there's something that's out there that we have to discuss, then this is the place to do it. With that, we'll adjourn our meeting, and thank you all for coming tonight. And we will see you at the next meeting on July 16th.